when I'm looking for collaborators, I'm looking for doers. I'm looking for people that like they're taking those chances. They're willing to take the leap. They're willing to do the hard work because they know what it's going to mean on the other side. Interesting thinking about that it's been 10 years, like since we started this. Coming into this conversation, I was curious because I started like thinking about my own memories about the Cult Creatives. What do you remember?
We were sitting in our kitchen.
Universal City Lofts.
The apartment, yeah. And if you could take us back to that day.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I don't remember the day like super clearly. I don't have the best memory, but I do remember I felt like knowing what I knew and like just, I think that that's something that's interesting about my path is that I don't know if it's like a survival thing, but like I'm looking for gaps. I'm looking for places where people aren't going, and then I can go and fill that gap. Mm-hmm. Even like because I played instruments growing up, but I wasn't very good at the different instruments. But I remember like you had to choose your instrument, and I chose French horn, and that's a very interesting instrument to choose. Most people, there's guitar, there's drums, there's trumpet, there's things that are more what I think are like the lead singer instruments. And French horn was...
You're a different guy.
It was like tucked in, but I think honestly, the way that I thought about it back then is I'm like, everybody's going to go for trumpet. I'm going to go for French horn because I would like to try to get a scholarship and get out of my small town or whatever. And this is going to be my vehicle. So I'll just own French horn and I'll be like the very best at this. And everybody else can go and compete with trumpet. That I think, doing the talent buying thing and like, curating that event, I saw the struggles that artists were going through, but I also saw the struggles that managers were going through. That I was like, man, this is so tough that it's like a manager and sometimes they have an assistant, sometimes they have, a day-to-day person, but not often. And they're trying to grow potentially a multi-million-dollar business by themselves. And managers, and they're all different kinds of managers. Like there's managers that are more like creative directors, and they like see a vision and they help sort of craft the story. There are a lot of managers that are like relationships people, where it's all about knowing the right person to call in the right moment. Mm-hmm. There are managers that are like negotiators, and they're just born like deal makers. They love just, hammering that deal and getting the deal done. But I saw that like the creative director managers, there weren't as many of those. Like it was mostly like sort of the deal getters or the relationships people. And it's tough, right? Like if you have an artist, you're trying to, especially if your artist is starting to scale, you need all this stuff to like go with the artist's music. You need photo stuff. You might be doing music videos. You need tour flyers. You need the single art. You need all of this stuff. And if you find that it's like, well, this manager is maybe not the creative director type, they're with an artist that is more focused on the music and is just crushing at the music, but maybe they haven't made the visual component of their brand as much of a priority, they might need help. So like, this is my long-winded explanation of like kind of seeing a gap. I feel like they could use something like this.
Ever wonder how to truly cut through the noise and get your music to a broader audience? The Cult Creatives is a niche agency servicing the communities and brands surrounding the spaces of music and fashion. Our unique backgrounds of being highly involved with some of the largest music and fashion brands in the world gives us a unique perspective on how to connect creatives with their audiences. We offer a variety of services, including creative direction, design, photography, videography, and strategy. Head to thecultcreatives.com to learn more. The Cult Creatives, not to be replicated. But if you try, we wouldn't blame you.
So this is, at the beginning of high-level social media marketing.
Right.
So right. It is interesting that you had kind of that foresight that all of these artists could benefit from assets, the treadmill of assets, as you call it.
Right.
And to go along with their project.
Yeah, having the story and then having all the assets that would go along with it, because the manager used to have to make all of those calls. So the manager has to find the photographer to shoot the press photos. They have to find the graphic designer to make the single art. They have to find the music video director or directors, get a bunch of treatments, take that back to their artist. And while they're doing all of this, they're not doing deals. They're like doing the creative. What happened with a lot of the people that we collaborated with in the beginning, managers, they'd just be like, this is so great because it just frees me up time-wise. I remember being like a little worried in the early days, and I'm like, oh no, I hope I'm not like stepping on the toes of the manager, coming up with, like working with the artist, and we're like crafting a vision, and then like, this is what it's going to be.
Well, it was new in the dance music scene, like for them to have kind of creative directors, because all the managers did have to wear that hat for so long. So it was, sometimes managers did get a little like uncomfortable with us stepping in that department. Yeah,
because you're managing, you want to manage it as a whole. And then it's like you almost start managing like two different people, because you're managing, the artist and the creative director that's on the project. And it's like everybody's going to have a different vision for like what they see, for the project and why they see that. But I do think that that's with the managers in the beginning, the ones I think that they like found value in what we were doing. It just became this really great relationship, between us and, the artist and the management, that it's like, well, now we know what this is. So you set the, what is the story and like, how does the story look? And, almost like a movie. It's what's the movie about? What does the setting look like? What are the characters, in the movie? And now everybody knows what it is. And now you just got to go make stuff, to then promote the movie. I think just going back to what we were saying of the why in the beginning is that it just felt like a need, maybe for better or for worse. The way that I felt coming from the dance music world was I would look at rock and roll, or I'd look at punk or hip hop, just the way that this is being presented is so cool. The way that like hip hop is being presented, the music videos and the way the artists look. And, same thing with like rock and roll. And with dance music, I just feel like we weren't being presented the way that I thought was very cool, like in the scene as a whole. There was a little bit of that it was like kind of the same thing of like, creating a party is there's these parties, but like, I feel like if we did something like this, like that would be cooler. Mm-hmm. So that was like making the artist cool helps make the scene cool.
Right.
And that's really what I wanted all along, because I did feel like when I would hang out with my peers and hang out with other people in dance music, and I would hang out with people from the rock world, I would hang out with people from the hip hop world. These are all just like amazing creative people. It's not better or worse. People that I know in the dance music space are equally as cool as like the people that I know from the hip hop space, but I feel like it's just not packaged maybe the right way. So there was
back then, sorry to cut you off, but back then I feel like a lot of the art looked like screensavers.
It did.
It was not great. I mean, there were very few artists that were doing it really, really well, in my opinion.
Yep.
So there was definitely a gap.
Yeah.
And it was not being portrayed to the public as like a really serious, because electronic dance music artists are very serious musicians.
Right.
Just as serious as a hip hop artist or a country artist, whatever.
Yeah, rock and roll.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But when you looked at the artwork and the marketing, it was a little cheesy.
It was. And I think that I did have that feeling of like, I want to make this cooler. And again, like, who am I? Like, and like my opinion, but it is just my opinion. I think that this is presented in a way that's cool, and this is not. Like, and I remember I would have these conversations with you back then where it's like, we need to be better. I would feel that about the scene.
Yeah.
I don't know why I felt like I had any authority like to say that. I think that that was also part of the heart of what the cult thing was for me, like in the early days, was like, and actually still to this day, is like, I want people to see what I see. Like, I want them to see what I see in this artist. I just think it's not packaged the right way. Like, this is an amazing thing, but the way that it's packaged, I don't think that it's being received the way that the audience, not being received the way that I think it should be received. It does like maybe sound egotistical, like I sort of keep coming back to me, but like that is how I felt. And it's still how I feel when I go into a project. It's about the artist and like their connection with the audience. I look at myself as like a vehicle to try to help that happen. And I honestly, like, we've never really talked about this, but I think that like, it wasn't like a role switch. It's just like our roles expanded. And then I started getting in, to doing some of the creative, because I had my artist project in the beginning of the Cult Creatives. I'm on tour. So I was gone, all the time. But I think it's like, I got addicted to that. I also got addicted to like being on sets and like, making the art and then seeing how stoked, the artists were. And I mean, if that's what I think allowed me to even make the choice to, I don't say that I'm retired from making music or having an artist project. I say it's on pause. But I think that's how I was able to like justify it in my own mind, is that I was like, well, this route, it seems very self-serving, even though you're making music for people and you're performing for people and like making them happy and like there's a purpose in that. This route was like I got to serve people, and like every single time I felt this like almost overwhelming level of fulfillment at the end, being able to present this back to the artist, and then the artist starts to put it out in the world, and then what would happen once they did and like how people would respond to it.
I think that that's something that you started like getting really excited about with the company too, is I remember there were a few campaigns in the middle of the Cult Creatives that you worked on specifically as the creative director, and you kind of saw the artist's career like, phew, after, not saying that it was just you, but in hand with the music, the marketing, the manager, the whole team, like being a part of that trajectory was really exciting to you, I believe.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Because like, it's funny because I have like, the artist and creative side of my brain, and then I have the business side of my brain and numbers and, results and stats and data. And so that it was like a combination of the two of those things where it was like, okay, we created a new story and then we applied that to the brand, launch it, see how the world feels about it. It's very similar to music. People seem to respond to that, not every single time, but most of the time. Like, I feel like our batting average was really good for what was happening, results wise. But I think it was that it was like, I was getting to utilize my creativity. I remember like thinking there was we had like a handful of artists that happened like one after the other. And it was similar actually to like when we had the event where it's like, I remember, the event wasn't popular straight out of the gate. It took us time to like build an audience and like, get people excited about the Control event. But then once it started to go, we had a series of shows where it's like, oh, this is a thing. And I felt that same way about Cult, that it was like, oh, wow, this is really changing the artist business, as a whole. I think that like that's the thing that hooked me, and like why I think I'm still just as excited now. It's so different when like the artist and their management, and you see that change happen. But like you get to be this part of their story, and then
so fulfilling.
It's so fulfilling, and you get that like text where it's like, we just got an offer for Coachella, and like we need you to do the stage. It's like that where you're like, man, that's so awesome. I'm almost as excited like it's happening for me, and it's not. But it's like you become like a proud parent.
I feel the same. Yeah. It's very cool.
What if there was a school where you could learn to produce music just like your favorite artists? using the best equipment and techniques the industry has to offer. Enter Icon Collective. For nearly 2 decades, Icon Collective has dedicated itself to turning aspiring artists into global sensations. Countless artists such as Slander, Nightmare, Jaws, Keizo, and many more have graduated from Icon Collective. Icon Collective is a school created by artists for artists. Discover the ultimate music education experience. You'll be mentored by top industry professionals who will help you refine your skills and elevate your techniques to a pro level. You'll join a vibrant community of like-minded musicians and artists. Unlock your creative genius and embark on a transformative adventure. Head to iconcollective.edu to learn more.
When you put your artist project on pause and you started to get a little addicted to the creative process and all that with the brands and seeing the results, where were we in the business? Do you remember?
I do. We were living in Porter Ranch area in that time. And I do remember that I think I went and played a show. I went and I played a show, and it was like a trap showcase show in Northern California. And no shade on this event, but the event itself was not like, it was something where I remember driving home from the event and being like, yeah, that, and you'd have bad shows. Like, that's just like, you have good shows, you have bad shows, you have good shows, you have weird shows. It's just kind of part of the game. But it was like, I don't feel, it doesn't really matter how big the crowd is. I don't feel like I'm getting the feeling I used to get like from performing. And I wasn't sure why and like what it was about. I remember thinking like, is it the genre that I'm making? Is it that, now I'm like just wanting to be on tour, gotta like write another hit so that I can go, do this thing. I remember driving home from that show and like, I don't know why I drove to NorCal, but I did. But it was a long drive. And on that drive, I started thinking about, I think you text me or something, but there was a project or something for Cult like that came up during the drive. And then I started thinking about that project, and I started getting really excited about whatever the project was. And I'm like, so this is making me feel this way. This is making me feel this way. I really like to like focus on, these are the things that I'm doing. I can do more things than one, but it's like, I don't want to have 10 different things because I feel like I would then be doing all 10 of these things in a mediocre way. And so, yeah, I remember coming home and talking to you and being like, if you'll have me, it's like, I want to, be more involved in this. And I kind of want to put a pause on, this side. And, there's things about it that I miss. Like, I miss performing. I miss the act of making music. And
like you said, it's on pause. It was kind of like a organic like pull towards the business, towards the Cult Creatives. Everything kind of just aligned that way in all the different years.
I think it was like a pull towards service.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really, and take that as you will. Like, I think that like people, it's like service, server, that position. I just feel very comfortable here. I enjoy the spotlight. I enjoy, being out in front of a crowd. I enjoy getting up and talking in front of people. But yeah, there's just nothing as fulfilling as helping another person. And not like how you kind of sell yourself that you've helped someone, like truly helping someone, truly helping them on their journey with, they've got an issue or they've got a problem. You help them solve that problem. And that. Mm-hmm. Like, you can go to bed knowing that it's like, I helped there. And then you start to like help more people. It just like compounds. It completely changed my identity of self. It changed how, like I felt about my own purpose. So you're right. It was organic. And I think that that's like, it was always about chasing purpose.
Right.
This is just a very unique thing. And like, working in the dance music world and branding and creative direction. But I think ultimately like just trying to help other people in your own way with like the things that Because I do remember there was a part of our business where we like, brought on other partners and we scaled and like had, a huge staff of like, video department and photo department, and tons of designers and art directors and all that. And I remember having feelings during that time of like, well, I don't feel as close to the creative. Like I'm managing creative directors and I'm like working with them a little bit, but it's really like their project. And like, I didn't like that. Actually, I didn't like, being so far away from the creative. Things would come out of the shop and I'd be like, it's amazing, but like, I didn't have, maybe that's an ego thing, but like, I didn't have as much to do with it. And so I just didn't feel as tied to the win of it all.
Yeah.
But has that changed at all for you of like now having changed roles? And I don't think we've ever talked about that. Just like the fulfillment side of like the wins and all that for you.
Yeah. For me back then when we did kind of scale to a larger team and partners, I felt not disconnected, but I didn't feel as comfortable.
Right. Because before it was just me and you.
Because there were so many people to manage. I was kind of assisting with like project management back then, as well
producing
as
a little bit.
Yeah, producing a little bit, doing a little bit of the creative, still wearing multiple hats. But
right.
Yeah, it just like, it wasn't what I fell in love with in the beginning. So when we scaled back down and it became you and I again, it felt way more fulfilling in that sense, just because it kind of felt like this is why we started it. We like to work together.
Yeah.
I think we work pretty well together.
We're married, by the way. I don't think we said that part. And we co-own the Cult Creatives.
We have worked together as long as we've been together.
Yeah. Yeah, because
like I think a week after we started dating, we started our first business together.
Yeah, which was a clothing store. Yeah, because I remember on one of our like early dates, you told me that you were interested in fashion buying, and you had another friend that was like, you guys were just into like that particular path. And I was like, oh, and then I had a friend who was like, they had a successful clothing store, but they had blown up doing their own clothing brand. And they're like, do you know anybody that might want to take over the shop? And I was always super interested in it. I didn't come from that world, but I had so many friends in that world. And I was like, oh, this could be a really great opportunity. We'll go and do the shop, and then Lindsay can be the women's buyer. And it would like give her an opportunity to do it. And yeah, we were in business like so shortly after starting to date, and have done many, many businesses since then, which we'll get into that later, of the pros and cons of having a business with your boyfriend, girlfriend, or spouse.
No cons, right?
No cons. No, no, not at all. Do you have like highlights from the last 10 years of Cult, like things that stick out in your mind that you're like, oh my gosh, like that was so amazing? Or
I literally have like flashes in front of me. I'll pick out a few.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was one photo shoot where we went to the forest. I forget where it was. It was somewhere in LA. The photographer was amazing. Irina.
Oh yeah.
She had a bunch
shot
of
for Vogue.
Really cool locations. So she brought us to this forest, but we rented like a really big Gothic chair that the artist was going to sit on.
This was for Indo. I remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was such a cool shoot.
Right.
But we're hiking. I mean, you had to hike there.
Right.
So we're hiking with this big chair.
Oh, with furniture.
Yes.
Right.
And so it's like we were taking turns, like, because there were probably 4 of us on that shoot. And so we're like just hiking, and then we had to like, because it was rented, so we had to make sure it didn't get dirty, but like we're by this waterfall. Anyway, the photos were beautiful. They're still some of my favorite images.
Yeah.
Doing visuals for Coachella was really cool. Just to see like some of your art direction on that scale.
Right.
Like that was the first time that like some of our visuals were like that big.
Right.
So that was really cool. Yeah, some of the festival stuff.
It's so funny because like, I wish that like, if I'm honest, like I wish that like when I saw that at Coachella, I wish that the real feeling that I was feeling was just like a feeling of appreciation of the art and like what was created. What I'm actually feeling is I'm so grateful for the level of trust That's actually when I see it and it's like, oh, wow. And what's interesting is that I didn't do those visuals myself. I didn't build the staging myself. It's this huge collaborative effort between all these like amazing creative people. But it is like myself and the artist and the manager, it's our vision together of seeing like, oh, this would be really cool if like we presented this thing, that then seeing it, it's like, wow, they trusted me enough to come in and like have those conversations, and they felt those ideas were valuable enough to actually do them. I do have this thing that I'll say, like somebody feels like they're cult, and it's not like, oh, you're not cult and you are cult, but there's people that I'm like, oh, this person feels like they're a cult person. And I think really what it is that I'm feeling or what I'm seeing is that they're people that are doers. Because I'm like such a doer. All those years in LA, and not like shitting on LA, but like when you first moved to LA and like we would go out, you just interact with people in the different entertainment industries. People, they talk where it's like, oh man, that's cool. Like, I'm going to introduce you to this person, and like, I got to hook you up with this person, and we should talk. And it's just kind of how it is. It's part of the networking thing and like the shaking hands and kissing babies of, going out and meeting people,
My favorite thing.
Your favorite thing, which, is great to do. But I did feel like, I think maybe I got jaded from being in that world and seeing that so many of these instances, because I just always take people for their word. Because like if I were to say something like that, I would be serious about it. I think even from the beginning of Cult, I wanted it to be something where whatever we said, like we were really about it.
Yeah.
That it's like we would have these blue sky conversations of like, are we going to do this particular type of creative or like this music video idea? And when you're talking about it, I think that's actually was also very exciting to me is I'm like, we're going to do this. We're actually going to do this. And I want to be the type of person, and I know, you're like this too, that it's like, we show up. So it's not we're talking and that never happens. If we're saying we're going to do something, like we're going to do it. I wanted to be the person that showed up for other people and like other artists. And listen, we have an agency, we have a lot of clients, it's like you can't be there for every person in every second, but it's like if we're saying we're going to do a thing, we do that thing. Yeah. And like that's what I think, like when I'm looking for collaborators, I'm looking for doers. I'm looking for people that they're taking those chances. They're willing to take the leap. They're willing to do the hard work because they know like, what it's going to mean on the other side.
Yeah, I think your radar's pretty good after all these years, really knowing when somebody's that committed and ready to really put in the work. Because there are a few artists where we've had like initial conversations with, and we felt like maybe it's not the right time.
Right.
And we don't want to take just anybody's money.
Right.
We want to know that like if they're going to spend money with us, they're going to do their part. We're going to do our part to really show up for each other and try to make their goals happen.
Yeah, we've talked about this. It's such an interesting thing, right? That it's like we are an agency that specializes in creative direction. We do photo shoots and music videos and, all the brand storytelling, all the different things. But like, it is something that, there's an investment that someone's making into that collaboration. But the way that I look at it is, yes, there is an exchange of money, but there's also an exchange of time on our side. It's not that I think that my time is more valuable than anybody else out there. I think that all of everyone, like our time is the most valuable thing that we have. And so it's really not so much about, to be honest, it's not really about the time or the money for me. What it's about is the collaboration. And is this, there is an exchange that happens. You see the value in both sides and like how that's going to be a collaboration.
Skull Candy products are made for an on-the-go lifestyle. Headphones, earbuds, and speakers all deliver premium quality sound and a unique sonic experience tuned to you. With active noise-canceling technology, Skull Candy products are sweat, water, and dust resistant. Test for yourself with free shipping on orders over $99. Be prepared for skull-thumping, bone-rattling sound. For the ultimate immersive audio experience, choose Skullcandy. Break free from ordinary audio. Skullcandy, for your head.
I think that, back to what we were saying with Cult, we did it for 7 years. And then I remember year 7, we were just working on music campaigns, but that were in the corporate world. We got hit up to do a thing for Audemars with people that we're now very good friends with, who were working with Wasserman Agency. Yeah. Shout out Hype Club, Sully and EJ. But yeah, we just got hit up to do basically like a social campaign, but it was like with one of our music artists, and it was all about music and, kind of what would happen if you took the best golfers in the world and had them hit different golf shots, but then you made a dance music record out of that. Cool. I thought it was dope. Like whenever they pitched it to me, I was like, oh, like that's like, yes, of course I'd want to do that. But then, it's like we had a whole run of, working in the corporate world, which was so interesting because we did so much of that work during COVID. Mm-hmm. And it was like, I just remember like we kind of started moving towards that world.
Yeah, because music was kind of on pause during COVID.
Right.
And we, luckily were working very heavily in the corporate world.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun. It was so different, and we learned so much.
Oh my gosh. I felt like it was like a masterclass.
Yeah.
Like, because I felt like I had my unique perspective coming from music. Mm-hmm. And I did feel like that was a bit of a superpower coming into some of the conversations I was having.
Yeah.
But then seeing how, these multi-billion-dollar companies were operating and how, a campaign would need to work globally. It can't just be something that like, oh yeah, this is going to like pop off in LA or even in the US, that it's like you have to be thinking this is something that people in Australia or in Japan or in Africa, they need to experience the same thing. And, when you're crafting the creative, obviously the budgets were very different in that world.
We weren't used to that.
Yeah, I mean, like just trying to get a budget for a music video, was like pulling teeth in music. And, it's a different thing in that world.
You know what I think is cool though, is because we came from the music world already. We already know how to get scrappy.
We were scrappy.
And like get such cool creative out of it. We still kind of had that scrappy mentality with it to like do even cooler shit.
I feel like I'm having just as much fun, if not more, than like when we first started. We do have a lot of things that we do. We have a lot of clients and a lot of projects and things that we're working on.
Yeah.
But like I look at my calendar and it's full, but I want to do everything that's on my calendar. And it's fun for me. Mm-hmm. It's like having a calendar that's like filled with, things that I enjoy.
Yeah.
And if I ever feel like, actually, I'm not starting to enjoy that so much, then like maybe not right away, but no,
we make adjustments.
Yeah. Just because it's so important. Who we are as people is so dictated by what our lifestyle and our experiences are.
Yeah.
So it goes into, we never even talked about our daughter that we have together, but it goes into, how we are as parents, what we're doing, in our life. I can't imagine having a better partner in this thing that we do. And it's been such a blast. We've talked about it so much about just the trust that we have, for each other and how we have our own lane. We didn't really talk about the pros and cons.
We can do a part 2 if needed.
Yeah. But like, I am just, so thankful to have a partner. And I'm not just like saying that because like we're on a podcast. I've told you this off mic and
it's genuine.
And often. Yeah. Because it is like so much of your life. And the work part of your life is like, who are you working with?
Yeah.
It's so cool that we get to work together. We're getting to do, what we do and hopefully help people and artists and companies and all the things. But yeah.
And I know we don't have that much more time. Just a quick little explanation of like, why did you want to start Neighborhood Art Supply?
When I was having these conversations, I would talk to sometimes, I don't know, 30 different artists in a month. And I would find myself saying the same things. And the artist would be saying the same things. And we'd be having the same kind of conversations, but it would just be happening on that Zoom call or like in that hang sesh or whatever when we're talking. I just feel like this is such a powerful conversation that's happening. We have access to some of the biggest artists in the world and, different, people from the industry and other creative people. And like, there's all these great people to just have good conversations with. I listen to a lot of different podcasts and I find so much value in the ones that are entertaining or the ones that are more like informational. But I feel like there wasn't a podcast that, again, maybe like finding a gap. There wasn't a podcast that I think is having these kind of conversations with these kind of people. I just want to have more real conversations about what it's actually like to do whatever the thing is that you're doing. And maybe other people would find value in that conversation. And, then having thoughts and things that I'm learning that I can then share with, the people that are following whatever we're doing with Cult. The core of it is if I'm doing it in a session, this is helping this one person. But maybe if I put it on tape, that I could help more than one person, even if it was 10. Yeah. That's why, I remember when we were talking about it initially, I'm like, oh, I don't care about the numbers at all. Yeah. Like if it's going to do what it's going to do, but that's not why I'm doing it, because it's like, oh, instead of just this one person that I'm having a conversation with, even if it helped two, it's like, because we had a production around it, great. That's a win for me.
Well, I remember when you started toying with the idea in your head, you were talking about these things that you were talking with artists about on your strategy calls and just how impactful they were. And so you toyed with, okay, I'm going to just make some Instagram posts about what I talked about.
Yeah.
And then you got a flood of messages just
right.
with how it impacted these artists' lives and mentality and process, all the things.
Right.
And then I remember it kind of stemmed from there about maybe it's a podcast. To share.
Totally.
So it's
and also
cool to see it all evolve.
Selfishly too, I love having these kind of conversations and I love spending time with these kind of people. Yeah. And this is, if you ever did bump into me out in the world or backstage at a show, all the artists and creative people that I would have on this pod, they know me. They know how I am. And I do, we'd be backstage at some music festival or whatever. And we would just get into some...
It's never small talk.
Never. No, I'll go deep that quick because that's what I care about. I actually want to know. I don't want all of the surface stuff. I want to get to how are you really? Let's talk about it and what's going on with you really.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean it has to be heavy. Let's just be real with one another. Yeah. So yeah, but I couldn't be, more stoked to do it and to be doing it with you. And I had to have you on episode 1. It was just so important for me personally, just because of my purpose for why I'm doing this, what we're building together. And we didn't say this, but we've always talked about the Cult community, just trying to grow that community and not grow that community for us, grow that community because artists need each other.
Connecting people.
Yeah. Creative people, they need each other and just the value of that community. And
that has turned into a newer passion within our company.
Yeah. I remember when we had 12th Planet play at Control, he closed his show and he goes, "My name is 12th Planet. Tell all your friends about me." And I was like, "Oh, that's
such a cool
it's so cool." That, and he's amazing. I got to have him on this. I think it's kind of the same. That sounds super like a shameless plug, but if it does mean something, to you, listening to this stuff, if there's other people that you think should be in the Cult and should drink the Kool-Aid,
oh no,
then just share our information. And we'll send you a document. You'll need to sign a few things and you can come live with us. You have to wear a certain kind of clothing, one color. Okay. We can cut all that out, right?
That's going to be cut.
But yeah, I could not be more excited about Neighborhood Art Supply and just so stoked to have you on episode 1.
Thank you.
Let's go get it.